You people ask for the weirdest videos. On this channel, I have made a ton of pretty stupid Smash Bros. Rankings. I've ranked Palutena's guidances, boxing ring titles, and even the pictures that appear at the end of Classic Mode. I still don't have a stage ranking, you guys could ask for that. But I love making these super specific ranking videos because it really lets me appreciate just how much work has gone into every detail about this game. And of course, that extends to the start of any match as well. During the fight, every character has moves that reference their home series in order to make them feel like that character, unless they're Ganondorf. But these character building references begin even earlier than the match itself. Even as far as the character select screen, the game has to represent each character with a unique render. But we already ranked all of those, so now it's time for the next step, how each character enters the stage. At the beginning of a match, the game needs to show each character appearing on the level. These animations are totally unique for each character and bring out a ton of personality and even reference how the character moves in their home series. However, with so many stage entrance animations, some are bound to be worse than others. So just as many of you have requested, today I'm going to be ranking every stage entrance animation from the worst to the best. I'll be judging these based on a couple of factors. First off, is the animation distinct and iconic? Is it easy to remember how they enter onto the stage, and is it different from how other characters enter? The difference factor will be very important. I'll also be judging these based on if they have a good reference or not. Obviously, animations that act as a reference to a character's home series will be a lot better than just making something up. Now, I'm not super familiar with every franchise in Smash, but I tried to use the wiki to help in the cases where I was unsure. Also, for a lot of the footage today, I'll be using a video from Nintendo Unity since they were able to get the animations without the UI covering the screen. Link to that video will be in the description. But with our factors laid out, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Okay guys, I promise I'm not completely biased for this first one. Forget all the things I've said in the past and trust that I truly believe this is the worst one. 89, Rosalina. I promise I'm not completely biased for this first one.
You have to believe me.
This is our first of many stage entrances where the character just kind of floats into place. Obviously, this is about the laziest thing you could do for a character. Most other entrances have some extra elements from their series come in, but Rosalina and a lot of these other floaty ones don't. The particle effects look kinda nice here, and it does at least fit with Rosalina, but I can't help but feel like it could have been better. Maybe instead of just floating in, they could have had her use a launch star from the background. That animation would be a similar concept, but it would also at least be tied to a stronger reference. That certainly wouldn't make it a favorite of mine still, but giving it a more distinct prop and sound effect would have been nice. 88 Simon and 87 Richter. These are the first two teleport animations, in which there are a lot of. This is about as basic as it gets. They just appear in a flash of light and then wiggle around their whip. The sound effect for the whip does at least make it a little better than Rosalina though. Also, as someone who doesn't play Castlevania, I'm not sure if this is a reference to something. The wiki didn't list anything, so I'm gonna assume no, but if it is, then maybe they could sneak up a couple spots. Also, Richter is higher because he's better. Sorry, Simon fans. 86, Shulk. Just kind of falls out of the sky and deactivates the Monado. It's another one I couldn't find any reference for and just feels extremely basic. For a lot of these ones at the start of the video, we're going to be going through them pretty quick. 85, Mii Gunner. They just sort of appear with a flash of electricity. Obviously, the Mii fighters have to have pretty generic animations in general since they're meant to be custom characters. The animation has to fit just as well with someone like Cuphead as it would for Sans Undertale. So I do think this is about the best they could do, I just can't put it up any higher. 84, Ryu. Yeah, he just kind of walks in. The cloud of smoke does help to add a tiny bit of aura here, but it's not enough to make this very exciting. Now you may notice that unlike Richter and Simon, I didn't combine Ryu and Ken, and that's because Ken's animation has a special attribute that we'll see a bit later. 83, Joker. This is pretty much the first Smash Bros. Ranking I have ever done that's put Joker near the bottom of the list. I've never even played Persona 5, so I'm on the same level as most Persona fans, but they just put so much effort into Joker as a whole that he usually tops, or at least gets very high up, on every list I make for this game. Before his stage entrance animation, I just find it to be kinda lame. Like Shulk, he'll just fall down from the sky, but then afterward, he'll strike his little glove pose that he does at the end of his final smash and up taunt. While that is a reference to the game, like I just said, it's used elsewhere in his moveset, which just makes it feel a bit repetitive here on the entrance animation. Now, this is also our first entry to have a listed origin on the wiki, which is simply the bullet hail battle start animation in Persona 5. That does seem like a fitting reference, which is what puts it above what we've seen so far, but I feel like they could have made this more distinct. Before working on this list, both me and my brother misremembered Joker's animation as him coming off the Morgana bus. We were definitely just thinking about how the Morgana bus works on the Memento stage, but I honestly think that would have been a more distinct entrance for Joker himself. Maybe actual Persona fans will disagree, but to me, this animation just doesn't have the same flair that I've come to expect from this character. 82, Sora. Another pretty basic float-in similar to Rosalina, but I think Sora has a tiny bit more flair to it with his particle effects and excited pose at the end. Even though this isn't the most interesting animation, it does at least get across how Sora is a floaty sword fighter. 81, Cloud. Like Shulk, he'll just fall out of the sky again, but I do like the extra flair of him catching his sword instead of just landing with it. Still not super special animation-wise, but it's got a bit more personality. 80, Mii Sword Fighter. Like Mii Gunner, it's another pretty generic one, but I think the tornado effect adds to the animation a little bit. I like how much more aggressively Mii Sword Fighter pops out as well. This is kinda similar to Link's old entrance animation in Smash 4 and Brawl, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was meant to be a reference to it. Link's old animation used to be based on the recorder item in the Zelda series that would let you warp to places. Since Link is based on his appearance in Breath of the Wild now, having Mii Sword Fighter keep this animation is kind of a cute way to have it still be represented. This is all just speculation though, it might not even be a reference at all. 79, Hero. Alright, we've got one that I can say has a concrete reference again. This time Hero uses Zoom to enter into the battle, and while that certainly works as a reference, it's also just a move he already has in Smash. Now I'm not against using moves for the entrance animation of course, but when Zoom's animation is already pretty similar to other characters like Cloud, it does come off as a bit weaker. I do really like the pose Hero strikes at the end though, it definitely adds some power behind him. 78, Lucario. He's pretty interesting as, spoilers, he's one of 2 Pokemon that don't share a Pokeball-based entrance animation. That definitely helps him in regards to being more unique. But seeing as he's the first Pokemon we're seeing on the list, I don't think the animation is all that great. He sort of just appears in a cloud of aura. Unfortunately, he doesn't really use it to have a very exciting animation, he just slowly descends onto the stage. Maybe if there was more power behind his appearance I'd like it better, but I just felt like this was a bit bland. It is helped by the fact that it's different from most of the other Pokemon, it just sucks that it's also worse than the other Pokemon. 77 Min Min and 76 Terry. Both of these have the character jump in from the background and hit a little pose. I like how these use the 3D space a bit more than the ones where the fighter falls down from the sky, but these two are still pretty basic at the end of the day. Of the two, I definitely like Terry more. His little hat adjustment fits him well, and the animation is also allegedly based on the lane switching mechanic in the Fatal Fury games. Also, I like Terry more than Mid-Mid. 75, Pac-Man. I'm honestly kinda mixed on this one. It's cool that we get a reference to his original 2D appearance, but the way he just kind of appears and jumps out of it is a little weird. It just kind of feels like they didn't have any good ideas for him, it just made it another so retro reference. Maybe if he moved onto the stage in 2D form rather than just appearing I would have liked it better, but I still think it would have just been kinda okay. 74, Yoshi. This is pretty much exactly what I would expect Yoshi's animation to be, as him hatching out of eggs is how he appears in almost every mainline Mario game. At this point in the list, we're definitely starting to get into some of the better animations, so Yoshi is really only being held back because of how unspecial the use of his egg is. He uses his shell as his side special and shield, so it doesn't make his entrance really stand out as all that unique. I do think him wagging his tail before the fight is pretty cute though. 73, Sheik. Appearing in a cloud of smoke is a pretty common ninja move, so it makes total sense for this to be her animation. It's not really based on anything, and we know it's not a Deku Nut because there's no flash, but I think it fits well enough. The leaf particle effects also add a bit more to it. One thing that is a tiny bit tragic is the loss of the Zelda puzzle jingle from Smash Bros. Melee. Now, Melee's entrance animations were pretty bad across the board since they basically didn't exist. Everyone would just spawn in as a trophy, which is much lamer than what every other Smash game, including 64 got instead. Although, one detail I did like from this game is the fact that Sheik's animation used to play the Zelda puzzle jingle. Now that was just a byproduct of Sheik using that sound whenever she transformed, but I honestly wouldn't mind if she still used that in her entrance animation today. Speaking of, it would be kinda cool if her animation was based on her transforming in the first place, but I understand they probably didn't want to make a new Zelda model for that. 72 Dark Pit and 71 Pit. Of all the characters to drop down from the sky, I definitely think Pit makes the most sense as he is an angel. There's not really a ton of personality to it, but it at least fits his character design. I also like that Dark Pit's particles are the same, but evil. 70 Ridley. This one is kinda similar to Min Min and Terry's, but the fly-in feels so much more aggressive. Plus the fact that he's flying in makes the animation look a lot cleaner since he'll start off screen instead of just popping into existence. I think this also makes perfect sense for Ridley due to how aggressive he is in Smash. The only thing that's really holding this back though is the weird lack of sound. This will be a common complaint throughout this video, as I think many of these animations would benefit from having the character's voice. In Ridley's case, I'm a bit surprised he doesn't let out a roar at the end, since I feel like it would fit right in. I'm thinking of something similar to his taunt roar. I think that would have made for a perfect ending to this animation. 69 Sonic. Him spin dashing in from the foreground makes total sense, though it does have a bit of Yoshi syndrome since he's in this form a lot during normal gameplay. And I mean a lot. I also don't think his pose after is all that special. It's not bad, but I feel like they could have gone with something a bit more cocky or confident. I also think this definitely should have been an entrance animation with a voice line. Sonic is known for yapping. 68 Mii Brawler. I'll be honest, I just think this one is kinda funny. Definitely has the most personality of all the Miis, especially with how much punching and kicking he does after the explosion. Since it fits so well with his archetype, I don't see any reason to not place it as my favorite Mii animation. 67 Zelda. Just sort of a generic magic teleport, but that is about what I'd expect from Zelda. The particle effects still look nice though, and I don't think this is unfitting, so I think this placement is fair. 66 Olimar. This is our first real animation to use a prop, which I really like to see in these as it makes the animations feel more unique. This time Olimar comes hopping out of the Hakatate ship, which fits with him landing on the planets in the Pikmin series. Unfortunately, what holds it back for me is the fact that the ship itself starts landed instead of coming down from the sky. I think that was done because Olimar has to pluck his Pikmin out from the ground as well, and there just wouldn't be enough time to complete the animation. I still like the idea quite a bit, I just think it could have been cooler. 65 Wii Fit Trainer. Now I was originally going to place this lower down, until I realized that this is the only place in the Wii Fit Trainer's moveset where we get to see the Wii balance board. This was a massive part of Wii Fit as it's the controller you use in most of the minigame. Oops. Even more than that though, the Wii balance board was also a character in the game, and I always thought he was a cute little guy. If you notice in this animation, they actually carry that over by having the Wii balance board wave back to the player as they disappear. So even if the Wii Fit trainers themselves aren't really doing anything interesting, I'm happy the Wii balance board got to appear here. 64 through 58? Basically everyone from Fire Emblem. I know it's a joke that all the Fire Emblem characters are the same in Smash, and while a lot of them do have solid differences in their moveset, their entrance animations are certainly not beating the allegations. From what I can tell, they're all based on the same thing, being warp magic from the Fire Emblem series. Now this teleport is certainly more distinct than the other teleports you've seen so far, but the issue is just how many people have it. Fire Emblem having so many characters on the roster really shot themselves in the foot here, as it makes these warp magic entrances far too common. Each of them do look good, and the warp magic particle effect is pretty distinct, but I just get bored of seeing all of these. Now luckily, the characters do each have their own animations in the magic, so that's how we're going to be determining their order here. Chrome is my least favorite since he's just a one-to-one copy of Roy. Next up is Robin, who has a bit of a weaker animation due to how floaty he is. Then there's Ike, who just doesn't really do anything too special. After that is Byleth, who has a weaker animation like Robin, but their warp magic does look a little different, being based on 3 houses. Next up is Marth, since he was the first, he's seen everything. Roy comes after that since I think his sword slamming into the ground really helps to express his more aggressive personality in Smash. And finally, my favorite has to go to Lucina, since her starting with her mask and flinging it off was a great touch to tie her back into Fire Emblem Awakening. 57. Meta Knight. I just think this fits Meta Knight's vibe extremely well. It's sort of similar to his dimensional cape move, but I love the extra cape flip he does at the end. It really brings out a lot of his personality, what otherwise could have been a pretty boring concept. 56. Young Link. This is another teleport animation, but like the Fire Emblem crew, I like this a bit more than some of the others since it actually has a solid origin. This is based on the teleport spots that Link would go on to after the dungeons in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Seeing as this is the Link from both of those games, I think this fits pretty well. Now personally, I think it would have been cool if we got the Song of Soaring as his animation, since it has a pretty distinct look and could have incorporated the Ocarina, which Young Link doesn't use at all in Smash. But the warp spot certainly still works, and it represents both N64 games instead of just Majora's Mask. Fun fact, this was also normal Link's original entrance animation in Smash 64, so it was kinda cool to see it return in Ultimate so many years later. 55. Bowser Jr. and the Koopalings. I think the idea of them flying in on the clown car makes perfect sense, and I like how they appear with an explosion. The face they make at the camera is also pretty perfect for all of their personalities as enemies. However, this might just be the animation I feel the lack of sound with the most. Doesn't it feel like they should be doing some sort of maniacal laugh as they make their face towards the camera? As it is, their sort of taunt feels a bit empty since they don't have a sound effect to back it up. If they had a laugh behind this, it would certainly jump up several spots on the list. 54. Corrin. Okay, something has to be wrong today. What do you mean Joker is low on the list, and Corrin has easily the best Fire Emblem animation? Well, that comes down to the fact that Corrin is the only one to not use warp magic, making them automatically the most distinct one. Now that could have still flopped like I feel like Lucario's did, but I actually decently like this one. They spawn in with their dragon form, splash down onto a puddle of water, then smoothly transition back into a human. It's maybe a bit lower energy than it could have been, but hey, I guess that fits with Corrin being bland. I'm happy they went with something a bit more unique for him though. Good job for once, Corrin. 53 through 46. Most of the Pokemon. These animations have the same issue that plagued the Fire Emblem characters, the fact that nearly everyone in the franchise has it, and it's a massive franchise. In this case, we got 8 characters who all get spawned in from Pokeballs. Now the reason I like this more than the Fire Emblem cast is because I feel like this was really the only logical thing you could do for the Pokemon. The Pokeball is also extremely iconic, so starting with a throw, just like all the trainer battles in the series, is pretty perfect. The sound design and flash of the Pokeball is also very iconic, making these entrance animations work very well. Now there is another small issue outside of just oversaturation, the fact that most of the Pokemon don't make a sound. In the Pokemon series, every time you release a Pokemon from its ball, it makes some sort of cry. In Smash though, they mostly don't do that, which just feels kinda wrong. If each Pokemon made their cries when released, I think the group as a whole would definitely move up a bit. But going from worst to best, we start with Jigglypuff. They just kind of lazily float around, which does fit with the character design, but it would have been nice if we captured more of its personality. Then there's Incineroar, which definitely has a much better animation with him posing to the camera. The lack of a voice line though can be felt extra hard here. Pikachu is up next, since I do like the electric particle effects he has here. Again though, he feels really empty without saying Pikachu. Ivysaur, Squirtle, and Charizard's animations are all kinda weak, but it does get points for the trainer having a voice line for each one. Of these three, Charizard easily has the best animation. Greninja gets to follow them up by having a nice animation with a good splash of water to end it off. And also he's my favorite Pokemon. And finally for this group we have Pichu, because unlike everyone else, he does actually say his name. That makes his animation feel so much more complete than everyone else, and it's able to inject his playful personality into this perfectly. I was considering moving this up higher on the list because of that, but I think keeping it with the rest of the Pokeball Pokemon makes sense. 45 Pyra and 44 Mithra. Yes, this is another drop out of the sky sword fighter, but I think there's a bit more to this one. I really like that it starts out with Rex, probably as a reference to the fact that he's the actual main character of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. He does also show up in their final smashes, victory screens, and taunts, so it's not like him appearing here is super special, but it makes this much more unique than something like Cloud or Shulk's animation. I also just really like the way he tosses the sword back into Pyra and Mithra's hands. It adds a lot of energy to this otherwise pretty generic animation. Now that would normally be the end of this segment, but these two actually have a unique property that only one other entrance animation shares, the fact that it slightly changes based on the direction the character is facing. Pyra's is definitely more subtle, with her just moving her arm slightly differently. Mithra is much more obvious, where she'll either point with her hand if she's facing right, or point with her sword if she's facing left. Definitely a bit of a random addition, but it's a nice detail regardless. 43, Inkling. This is just about exactly what I expect from them, crashing down in their squid form and causing a big ink explosion. This is directly taken from how they enter stages in the Splatoon series, so I think it's a pretty perfect fit. It is pretty similar to how their up special acts when it lands on stage, but I don't think that makes this lose too much credit. 42, Mr. Game & Watch. This is a really cute way to reference the original Game & Watch systems. Due to how their screens worked, you'd always be able to see all of the animation frames even if they weren't lit up. That would obviously be very annoying to deal with in a game like Smash, so having that aspect of the system be represented through this entrance animation was a pretty perfect idea. Obviously the animation itself is not that exciting or anything, but that's kind of the point. 41, Snake. I think this was a really good way to do one of these warp in animations. Instead of just being a teleport, it's kind of implied that Snake was just already on the stage and is coming out of hiding. The electric effects really help to sell that too and make the animation much better, even if it is just him standing up. What also helps is the fact that Snake is one of the very few characters to actually get a voice line. According to the wiki, this is based on Metal Gear Solid 2, and I think it adds so much to the whole animation. I honestly think it's really weird how little voice lines are used in these animations though. Maybe it's because they don't want it to be obscured by the 3, 2, 1, go! But if that's the case, then there wouldn't be any voice lines. I would love it if more characters got them in future Smash games, since I really think it adds a lot to their personality, but as is, I'm at least happy that Snake got one. Also, I'm really happy they didn't just make him come out of a box. 40, Ken.
I'm ready for you. Bring it on.
And we have finally made it to our separated Echo Fighter. We saw Ryu all the way back at 84th place, so what makes me think Ken deserves to be so much higher? Unlike a lot of their moves, the animation here is pretty much the same between both of them. Well, the real reason I put this one up so high is because it has a voice line. It really captures Ken's confident attitude perfectly, and it just makes me wish that so many of these other entrance animations had voices too. It adds so much personality to the entrance, to the point where it can take a pretty boring animation and make it seem a whole lot better. 39 Peach and 38 Daisy. Sort of the inverse of Ryu and Ken here, as all of their move animations in-game are the same, but their entrance animation is actually somewhat different. The concept between the two is still the same, where they just twirl in place and appear. What I really like about these two though are their differences. Peach's is much more elegant with heart particle effects, whereas Daisy is far more upbeat with flower petals flying around. The animation differences capture their very different personalities quite well, while still making them feel like they belong together. Of course, I also like that both of them get a voice line here, which also fall in line with each of their personalities. 37, Samus. In this animation, she walks out of a save point from the Metroid series. Even without being a Metroid player, I do like this quite a bit, as it fits in well with Samus's technological vibe. I may have liked it a little bit more if I was a Metroid fan, but this is certainly a pretty strong placement. 36, Lucas. The Mr. Saturn table is funny. This is a totally distinct prop to just this animation, which makes it a whole lot more memorable. This is another one that I feel like I may have appreciated more if I played Mother 3, but I don't really feel like it. 35, Banjo and Kazooie. Unlike the last two entries, I actually have played Banjo and Kazooie. I just didn't like it. I do like the animation quite a bit though, as it's based on the jiggy transitions from the original game. This is a pretty creative idea, and I think it could have placed extremely high on the list, had it not felt empty due to the lack of voice lines. At the end of the animation, Banjo does the same bows that he does with his down taunt, but unlike that taunt, he doesn't go I feel like that's a huge loss on this entrance animation. This could have easily placed much higher if it didn't feel so empty at the end. 34, Palutena. These next few characters all have pretty similar concepts where they walk out of some sort of building or portal in the background. I always like these as they feel like a standard teleport animation but given a bit more aura. Plus, every character here gets their own totally unique design for their portal or building. In Palu's case, she'll get these bright golden doors, which I think conceptually is much more interesting than what Pit got. They probably could have just had her descending as well, so I'm happy we got something much more unique for her. The walking animation itself isn't too exciting, but I think it fits with the powerful goddess vibe. 33 Isabelle and 32 Villager. Both of these get a building from the Animal Crossing series to walk out of, being the town hall and their house respectively. These are both reused from the character's Final Smash, but since many people don't play with Final Smashes, I like that they appear here too. It makes perfect sense with the Animal Crossing series, and I don't think there was a better choice for either of these characters. The only thing that would have made these better is if the building also changed based on the character's ult. For the Villager, it would have been really cool if the roof color changed between costumes, since roof customization has been a feature in every Animal Crossing game. Still though, these are both good as is, I just think that would have been a cute detail. 31 through 28, Dark Samus, Ganondorf, Sephiroth, and Kazuya. All four of these come out as some sort of dark portal, and while that may make some want to dock points, I think they each do it in a unique enough way that I'm happy to leave them higher up on the list. Dark Samus's portal is more blue than the others, which I think fits with its evil space alien vibe. I also appreciate how this is the only Echo Fighter to get a completely different entrance animation than their original counterpart. Peach and Daisy are animated differently too, but Dark Samus just has a completely new idea. Ganondorf is my next favorite in this streak, and I like that his has a bit of an origin in the Zelda series. More specifically, his portal resembles those the Phantom Ganon would use in Ocarina of Time. I think that's a great way for Ganondorf to enter the fight in Smash as well, especially since this is specifically Ocarina of Time Ganondorf. Plus, I just love the color purple.
Purple!
Sephiroth doesn't have an origin listed on the wiki, but I do like the animation a bit more here. The slow descent down mixed with the ominous purple he's coming from really give you a good idea of his character. Hey, you hypocrite! The other part I really like though is the design of the purple mist, because it briefly looks like his one wing before dissipating into nothing. That was a really good touch. It sort of acts like subtle foreshadowing. Finally, we have Kazuya, who I think has the best general posing of the bunch. Coming out with his arms crossed is already intimidating, but add on the red eye flash in the devil form, and this becomes my favorite of the Dark Portal animations. 27, Bayonetta. I just think the idea behind this one is great, having Bayonetta use Bat Within to form herself on the battlefield. Plus the purple Umbra magic symbol that appears also helps make the animation even more distinct. The sound it makes is also pretty great as well, just a big fan of a lot on this one. 26, Bowser. This asks the daring question, what if the dark purple portals were on fire? Due to how tied fire is to Bowser in the main Mario series, I think this works as a great entrance animation. Maybe not the most iconic since the fire portal isn't the most unique thing in the world, but it perfectly conveys how much of a beast Bowser is. The slow walk out of the fire portal is also just the cherry on top. 25, Mega Man. It may just be another teleport one, but if anyone is gonna have it, I think it belongs to Mega Man. This is based on how he enters stages in the Mega Man series, and I really don't think there was a better fit. The sound design on this one is also perfect. It's really only being held back by the fact that the animation itself is very simple. 24, Mewtwo. Okay, I know where all of Lucario's aura went. Here we have our final Pokemon, and of course, the other one to not use a Pokeball. It makes complete sense for Mewtwo to be one of the exceptions, seeing as he is a legendary, so his most memorable encounter will always be when he's out in the wild. Love the spin that he does as he warps in, along with the purple particle effects. Mewtwo is maybe a little less tied to his teleport animation than Mega Man would be, but the added aura here on Mewtwo makes his better in my opinion. 23 Diddy Kong and 22 Donkey Kong. Both of these two have the same idea of bursting out of barrels from the Donkey Kong Country series. I think this makes perfect sense for both of them since barrels are a huge part of their series that they don't really represent much in Smash. It's still pretty shocking that Donkey Kong doesn't have a single barrel move even though he literally used them in his original arcade appearance. Okay, well, Cranky used them, but whatever, shut up. Of the two, I definitely like Donkey Kong's pose better. I think it really captures his strongman personality. Diddy's animation is fine, just not as fun as Donkey Kong flexing at the camera. 21, Toon Link. This was a great idea to showcase Wind Waker's unique art style a little bit more. He does use the same bombs in his moveset, so appearing in the smoke is a little less unique, but it always stood out to me as being a more memorable entrance compared to most of the Zelda cast. What also makes this animation special is Toon Link's face. I love his shocked expression here, it really shows off how much more of a goofball he is compared to the rest of his series. 20, Little Mac. Love that he just comes in running and punching, shows right away how antsy he is for a fight. The best part though is definitely the fact that he comes in wearing his iconic pink hoodie before flinging it off. Unless you're using one of the hoodie alts, this is the only time Mac will wear the hoodie, which helps make the entrance feel a bit more special. Speaking of alts though, this animation does have a few weird problems. On standard Mac it works perfectly fine, but on the hoodie and wireframe alts, it's a little bit broken. In the case of the hoodies, the animation just feels kinda lackluster if he doesn't take it off, especially since he still does the same movements. I think giving those a slightly tweaked animation like how Pyra and Mithras changed based on the direction they face would have been nice. As for the wireframe alts, Little Mac normally wears a green hoodie, which is a nice touch to make it a bit more distinct. However, when he goes to throw off his hoodie, it turns pink? This is obviously a pretty big error, especially since it wasn't like this in Smash 4. Not sure why it's like this in Ultimate, but I think this has to dock it a few points. Still a great and perfectly fitting idea, it just has a really wonky execution. 19, King K. Rool. I feel like I shouldn't like this one as much as I do, but I can't help it. King K. Rool is just a really funny guy. Something about him slamming down with his arms already crossed is just hilarious to me. It fits his goofy cartoon villain vibe excellently. This also of course comes with an evil laugh, which I also appreciate since a lot of these other animations completely lack the voices they should be having. For nailing the wacky villain vibe, I don't see any reason to put this lower. I like it quite a bit. 18, Link. And for our final Zelda character, we have the main man himself. I believe he's the character to get the most entrance animations across the Smash series since he's been changed for every iteration of Link. Champion Link getting the paraglider for Breath of the Wild is also pretty perfect, seeing as that was a huge part of that game that isn't present in his ultimate moveset. I'm also not really sure if this would count as an animation difference, but I like how he swaps between coming in from the fore or background depending on the direction he's facing. Pretty sure the animation itself is the same, but it helps utilize the 3D space even better. Only thing holding this back is the fact that it's a pretty calm animation, but it works great for the idea. 17, Ice Climbers. Nice to see them use the Condor, as that's one of the very few things they actually can reference from the original Ice Climber game. I also think the high five Nana and Popo do at the end is really cute and shows off their teamwork well. 16, Kirby. Now this is how you add some energy to a flying in animation. Kirby crash landing on the stage with the warp star is really funny, and also the best reference they could give him, seeing as that's how he starts levels in almost every Kirby game. And I also love the way he spins off the explosion before landing on the stage. The only thing slightly holding this back is the fact that the warp star is an item, so it's not an entirely unique reference, but I don't really think that matters too much. 15, Duck Hunt. Perfect reference on this one, basically being ripped directly from the start of Duck Hunt. The laugh is the most iconic part of the Duck Hunt dog, so it makes sense to open a match with it, along with the in-universe explanation of him just being annoying. The only reason I don't put this higher is just the fact that the laugh sound effect here isn't quite as good as the original. It seems so much quieter in Ultimate, which I feel like doesn't give off the same obnoxious energy as the original. I guess they didn't want to use the original sound since it was from the NES, but honestly, I wouldn't even mind it if it was just recycled. Speaking of, 14, Piranha Plant. Very cute way to have him enter onto the stage. I love the warp pipe sound effects and the fact that Piranha Plant's animations are reminiscent of how they appear in the 2D Mario series before shifting into their more lively Ultimate animation style. I can't really think of any better way to do this, especially since warp pipes are probably the most well-known form of video game transport. maybe the battle bus got it beat. While I do think they executed this idea flawlessly, the fact that so many of Piranha Plant's moves have him stretch out of a pipe like this does take away from this entrance's uniqueness. Heck, this animation is basically the same as his up taunt, even down to the sound effect. Still, I love the idea, so I think he deserves to place well. 13 through 10, all of the Star Fox characters in Zero Suit Samus. All 4 of these characters will fly in and eject themselves from their respective spaceships. Seeing as each of their spaceships are huge parts of their series, I think this is a fantastic way for them to come into the battle. They're each really big props that add a lot of motion right to the start of a fight. Even though these 4 are so similar, I wouldn't trade them for anything else. From my least to most favorite, I think Falco probably got the weakest landing pose of the bunch. I do really like how his ship flies partially upside down compared to the more smooth flight of Fox's R-Wing. Zero Suit Samus also has a weaker landing pose than the others, but since her ship looks totally different from the Star Fox crew, that did help her out. I also like that she uses her rocket boots to slow down her fall. Fox has that perfect superhero landing pose, and I think his personality was easily captured the best of this group. Finally, Wolf is my favorite for having a similar pose to Fox, while also having a more unique ship since he flies in on a Wolfin and not an R-Wing. 9. Steve. Wouldn't be an Odyssey Central video without Steve making it to the top 10. He almost didn't, but I moved him up at the last second. Sorry, Star Fox fans. Something tells me you've been burned worse anyway. Anyway, I love that they just have Steve mine in here. It sort of implies that he just strip mined his way into the Smash Arena, which I think is a very funny idea. The sound effects are also great here, and I like that he's given quite a bit of stone to mine. With that said, I do think it maybe could have been funnier if he just appeared on the stage and the Minecraft Join World text appeared at the bottom left. Maybe it could have even changed based on the nickname of the person playing Steve. Still though, what we got is great and definitely deserving of being in the top 10. 8. Wario. He's got a really funny spin on the vehicle concept as he just crashes his motorbike immediately. Most other people with a vehicle will just have it poof or fly off screen, so Wario's bike exploding makes it a lot better. Fits with his chaotic personality quite well, and obviously the bike is a big part of his portrayal in Smash since his biker outfit is the default. 7. Rob. This is a very unique concept, having Rob be physically built in front of the player. Even if it's not really based on anything, I think it fits him quite well as a robot. Wait, what? He was in Kirby's Dream Land 3? I'm a Rob, a LARPer. Okay, well I stand corrected. I guess it was partially based on something. For making me learn something new, I think 7th place is well deserved. 6. Dr. Mario. This is just about the most accurate thing on Doc's entire moveset to the gameplay of Dr. Mario. He starts behind a wall of pills that will gradually disappear, but if you pay attention, this actually follows the rules of the original game. You have to line up 4 of the same color to make the pills and viruses disappear. If we look back frame by frame with Doc's animation, we can see that it starts with a pill drop that causes a chain reaction of the colors lining up. This was such a creative idea, and I'm really happy they managed to fit Dr. Mario's puzzle aspect somewhere into Smash. I'd still like it to be incorporated into his final Smash somehow, but I'll definitely take this too. 5. Ness. Easily the best teleport animation of the bunch. It's ripped straight from Earthbound and represents that game's humor pretty well. I love that they went as far as to even change Ness's model to be covered in soot from the explosion, which is not really something they've done for any other entrance animation. Sure, some characters change model, but they usually reuse that model somewhere else in their moveset. Ness's look here is completely unique to just this entrance, which makes it significantly more memorable. The only critique that I have for it is the fact that I missed the portal he came out of in previous Smash games. Not really sure why they removed it, but clearly that isn't holding his animation back too much. 4. Captain Falcon. I think just about everyone expected this to appear pretty high up on the list. It's very similar to the spaceship entrances we saw a second ago, but the Blue Falcon being a ground vehicle makes the dismount animation itself much more interesting. The Falcon drifting into place and then speeding off is also much more fun to watch than the spaceship simply flying past the screen. Plus, I think the Blue Falcon just has my favorite design of all of the vehicles. What also helps Falcon out is the fact that he has our third and final animation to change based on the direction he's looking. While facing right, Falcon will very simply hop out of his car, but if he's facing left, he'll feel a bit extra and do a flip. Honestly, not sure why this animation difference exists, but I'm all for it. 3 Luigi and 2 Mario. wouldn't be an Odyssey Central video without Mario in the top 5. Like I mentioned back with Piranha Plant, the warp pipe is extremely iconic, so it was 100% the best choice to give the plumbers. I like that it even grows and shrinks out of the ground this time, just like it does in several of the mainline Mario games. Just like Peach and Daisy, the plumbers also got unique animations that capture their personalities extremely well. Mario is of course very confident, hitting his iconic jumping pose while he exits out. Luigi on the other hand is much more timid, using a scared expression from Luigi's Mansion. That's not Luigi. But what I think really brings this whole thing together is the voice line. Both of them say "let's-a go," which is probably the most iconic Mario phrase there is. The fact that voice lines are so rare in these animations also makes me appreciate its appearance here more, as they easily could have had them stay silent. I also like how the delivery of the line changes between the plumbers, with Mario's, again, being far more confident than Luigi's more wary delivery. I know that I often have a big bias toward Mario in these rankings, but I would be pretty surprised if people disagree with this one placing well. But there is one entrance animation that I think is slightly better. Before making this video, I really thought Mario might take the crown, until I was reminded of one King Dedede. Yeah, this one is just perfect. What better way is there to show off a character's royal status than to have him be carried in by his subjects? The way the Waddle Dees carry him in over their head is really cute, and I love the design of the platform King Dedede comes in on. It's very colorful and fits well with how pompous he is in Smash. I also think it's very funny how the Waddle Dees just get launched away the second he jumps off the platform. I have no notes for how they could have improved this one. It's great to see other characters from the Kirby franchise, and they implemented them in such a funny way. I'm not sure if it's a direct reference to the Kirby series, but just having the Waddle Dees present is enough of a reference for me. So for being a great showcase of King Dedede's character, along with good representation from the Kirby franchise, I think King Dedede gets to take the crown for the best entrance animation in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. But anyways, that's it for this video. Are you devastated that it didn't talk about Crazy Hand laughing like a maniac? Let me know in the comments. Gonna keep this outro short because I was not expecting this video to be as long as it was, and I've already delayed it for long enough. You'd really think I'd get used to this by now. I hope you all enjoyed this really silly ranking though. I love all these dumb Smash ranking ideas, so feel free to keep them coming. But before I go, I've got to thank my members being Patrick Gast, Expired Crazy Person, JJW Gamer Boy, The Shin Smash, Doodle Dog 222, The Cool Man, Lapox14, Megalomari, Danny Gaming Central, She's the Pal, Lorenz 1023, Lucy is Lovely, Foxtrot 4744, Lewis L64, Mr. G333, The Silent 123, Lilliput 69, Windows Vista fan-made content, newly rated Geometry Dash levels, Genie VV Yoso, Wyatt Derpy, Leonard Von Hevering, Maidzio2, Starfly, Disco Fama, Cassie Channel, Drop D Mike 75, Virtual Tomato, Extreme 5026, Daniel Castillo 1262, Aaron 0729, Anton 3669, Smuggy, Guy 112, Young Smoky VP7, Zach Pro, Flame 765, Peanut Brown of Gallery, Gorpasaurus, BFDI Macaron, Stephen Hafner, Night Vision 101, PDX, Wilbur, Mogo Mogo Boat, Stuffy Ant, Rich 229, Jeho Jim, Magnus and Larslot, Trifector, Tibby, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Nuclear, Blessed Tiger, Yanni the Duck, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Display Changer, B Major 2003, Sir Musty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Thicky Reiki, Ingenio TM, Tesseract, JubeTube, Jameson Pageson, Seafrost Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.